'cause you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. Or when you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. Might be coming back for sure.
Having worked out what an offer actually is, the next step that we've got to look at is what happens to that offer. Okay, so when does that offer, in legal terms, we'd say terminate? Does the offer go on forever? Like if I offer to buy your computer for $500, does that offer go on forever? Or does it stop at some point? When does it stop? And so that's what we're going to look at now. When does an offer terminate? An offer can terminate under a number of circumstances. The first is if it gets accepted, right? And we know that if we have an offer and an acceptance, then what we've got is agreement at this stage. However, an offer also ends if the offeree rejects it, if the offeror revokes it, if the offer lapses, or if there's a condition failure. This is quite a technical one, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we do want to make sure you're aware that it's a way that an offer can end or terminate. So the main one that we're going to concentrate on is this idea of a counteroffer. What happens when you're negotiating and various offers at various times are made? What is the offer that is actually on the table? Okay, so to look at that, we're going to look at this particular case of Hyde and Wrench. In Hyde and Wrench, we can see that they're negotiating around the sale of a piece of land, right? So Wrench has some land, Hyde is looking to buy it. So Wrench offers to sell the land for $1,200. Hyde says they don't want to pay it. Wrench then again offers to sell the land for $1,000. Hyde says they'll pay $950. Wrench says no. Hyde says they accept the offer for $1,000. Okay. So the question is this offer to sell the land for $1,000 still live? Because in the end, Wrench said no, they're not going to sell it. Okay, so if Wrench accepts, then obviously we've got a contract, but Wrench says, no, I don't want to sell it to you for $1,000. But Hyde is going to say, but look, you offered to sell it for me and I accepted it, so now we have agreement if we link those two. Okay. However, what was this? Where Hyde says they'll pay $950. So this is what's considered a counteroffer. Okay. So a counteroffer, because there's an offer, so I'll sell it to you for $1,000, I'll pay you $950 is the counter offer to that. And the counter offer legally is a rejection of the offer. Because you can see a counter offer is really saying no, right? No, I don't want to pay $1,000. I will pay. And that no becomes important because it's a rejection of this offer and it terminates this offer. So now this becomes an offer which is rejected, and this purported acceptance is actually an offer which Wrench ultimately rejected. And so there was no contract. That's why understanding what the offer and acceptance actually is becomes so crucial. The legal principle here, a counteroffer is a rejection of the original offer. The two most common things that are going to happen with an offer is it's either going to be accepted, resulting in a contract because we'll have agreement, provided we have the two other elements, or it will be rejected. If it's rejected, then the offer terminates. The offer is no longer live. Remember, Hyde and Wrench told us that a counteroffer is considered a rejection of the offer. So what happens where the offeror wants to back out? So you've made an offer, but maybe you were offering to buy a piece of land, then you see a better piece of land, so you want to back out of the original offer. Well, if the offer has not been accepted or rejected, the person making the offer, the offeror, can revoke is the legal word, but only if it hasn't been accepted. So an effective revocation must be brought to the notice of the offeree. So the offeree must know about the revocation, although they can learn about it indirectly. You cannot revoke after acceptance because you already have agreement. Okay, so revocation can only occur before acceptance. Note, you can revoke an offer even if you've promised to keep the offer open, unless there's been consideration paid, and that's called an option. Okay, so you can take the offer off the table, even if you promised that you wouldn't take it off the table, because that's just a promise. There's no consideration. If someone pays you something, they give you some consideration to keep the offer open, then it becomes an option and you have to. So the three most common ways that an offer will terminate is through acceptance, rejection, or revocation by the offeror. An offer can also lapse though. What happens when an offer lapses? Well, you might specify a period of time when the offer is open, like I'll sell you my computer for $200 up until midnight Friday. So I specify a time. Once that time is over, the offer will lapse. It can also lapse often if the offeror dies, because there's no one to contract with, there's no meeting of minds. That's a little bit more technical because sometimes the estate might step in, or it might not be about the actual offer or a person, it might be about the company they represent. So you've got to be a bit careful about interpreting that. And they can also lapse after a reasonable period of time if you haven't specified anything. That reasonable period of time is actually quite a technical area because it varies with what you're selling. You know, if you're selling a computer, right, a reasonable period of time for an offer to be open will be quite different than if you're selling milk, which goes off. Right? You would expect an offer to sell milk, the time period would be a lot shorter than the time period to sell a computer. So an offer can terminate by lapse if there was a specified period of time in the offer, a reasonable period of time has elapsed, or by the death of the offeror. At that point, you can't accept the offer because it has terminated. Notice Ramsgate Victoria Hotel in Montefiore is our authority for what a reasonable amount of time is. Finally, an offer can terminate from condition failure. That's a technical area, as I said, but what it means is if there was an explicit or implicit condition on which the existence of the offer depends, okay, and that condition fails, there is no offer. For instance, I offer to sell you my computer for $100 on the condition you get a 7 in the subject. If you don't get a 7, then the offer is terminated. That's what we mean by condition failure. Now that's a lot about offer because it's a technical area. We've learned what an offer is. We've learned how to distinguish an offer from an invitation to treat, from a request for information. And we've learned when an offer terminates, particularly the issue of a counteroffer. We also learned that to get agreement, we need to have acceptance. Acceptance terminates the offer because the offer and the acceptance become the agreement. And that's what we're going to look at in the next video, acceptance.